On February 23, 2018, an elevator camera in a Hollywood apartment building captured a short clip. A young woman with two suitcases and a man in a baseball cap. A minute later, her phone went completely silent. A day later, he came back home alone. Adea Shabani, 25, an actress from Skopje. Her trail on the digital map of California breaks off at a creek in the foothills of the Sierra Nevada. Her companion, a struggling actor named Christopher Spotz, would carry the answer to the central question with him after a chase down the 91 freeway toward the city of Corona. Where, between those 2 points, did the Hollywood dream of a young woman from Macedonia come to an end? And why did this case never get the resolution it deserved? Adea Shabani was born on March 16, 1992, in Skopje, the capital of North Macedonia, a Balkan city, a middle-class family, a quiet childhood. Her parents invested in her education and enrolled her at the international QSI school. Even as a teenager, Adea stood out among her peers, tall, fair-haired, with striking features. Theater, film, photography, anything that reached beyond ordinary life in Skopje pulled her in more than her schoolwork. After graduation, she made a decision that many in her circle considered too bold, and she moved to Paris to study. At the American University in Paris, she enrolled in the International Business Administration program, a prestigious path, a corporate career, a serious salary in foreign currency. In 2014, she earned her degree, and for a while she worked in Dubai as a salesperson at a jewelry store. The display cases full of gold and the wealthy clientele were supposed to be a stepping stone to stability. But it was right there that Adea understood business wasn't for her. She wanted a camera, not a counter. The decision came quickly, and she changed countries again. In 2016, Adea moved to Los Angeles. There she enrolled in one of America's most famous acting schools, the Stella Adler Studio. She went to auditions, built a modeling portfolio, and took small parts. In 2017, her name appeared in the credits of an independent film called All or Nothing. She told her friends she was only just getting started for real. Her family stayed in Skopje and supported her plans. Her mother was proud of her daughter, and the two of them sometimes texted back and forth several times a day. Adea's social media was full of smiles, walks around Los Angeles, the feed of a young woman for whom Hollywood had finally stopped being a dream and become a daily routine. That Hollywood routine quickly turned into a swirl of classes, auditions, and rented apartments. At the Stella Adler Studio, Adea found herself among dozens of newcomers like her, people who had given up steady lives for the stage. The atmosphere at the school was intense, every nerve exposed, casting decisions, competition for the teacher's attention, constant exchanges of news about new auditions. It was in this environment that Adea met Christopher Spotz. He was 33, a head taller than she was, with regular features and a smile he had practiced in hundreds of self-tapes. Spotz was born in Colorado, in a small town called Fort Morgan. When he was 10, his stepfather adopted him, and the boy took the surname Spotz. But in Los Angeles, everyone has their own backstory, and that detail didn't raise any flags. A relationship developed between Adea and Spotz, and it wasn't a clear one. They would spend days together, then drift apart for weeks. Friends described the couple as living on emotion, arguments, reconciliations, trips to the coast, photos together. In conversations, Adea called Spotz her Hollywood partner, a phrase that could mean almost anything. Not a fiancé, but not just a friend either. From the outside, it looked like the standard storyline of an actor's town. Two beginners, one rhythm, the same circle. The teachers at the studio saw them together after class. They turned up at cafes on Hollywood Boulevard, in small bars near the theaters, at evenings in students' apartments. Adea seemed happy, and her feed started filling up with shots of the two of them. That the man across from her had another woman in his life. That during these months, she did not suspect. He almost never mentioned her. The other woman was Mary El Malak, a nurse from Los Angeles. By the start of 2018, she and Spotz had been officially engaged for several months. A ring, shared plans, talk about the wedding. Everything as it should be. Spotz ran that part of his life in one corner of the city, never overlapping with the acting studio. Closer to Hollywood Boulevard, he had Adea. The double life wasn't theoretical, it was daily. Adea knew about the fiancé. At some point, Spotz told her the truth, and she made the decision to stay, hoping things would become clearer in the future. Friends would later say that this uncertainty was wearing her down. She asked questions, demanded conversations, sometimes pulled away, but she always came back to him. The most striking illustration of Spotz's double life came on February 14th, 2018, Valentine's Day. In the morning, he met Mary Elmalak. Gifts, a restaurant, all of it as you would expect from a fiancé. By the evening of that same day, he was already with Adea. According to people close to them, both women spent Valentine's Day with the same man, with no idea about each other. Spotz behaved as if two worlds could exist side by side for as long as he wanted. In the podcast To Live and Die in L.A., released in 2019, journalist Neil Strauss called this episode one of the turning points. For the investigation, Valentine's Day mattered not on its own, but as a symptom. It showed how far Spotz had developed his ability to keep both lives in airtight isolation. That evening, Adea was texting a friend jokes about red candles and talking about parts in the new semester. Exactly 9 days remained until her disappearance. In those 9 days, one of the two women in Spotz's life would vanish from every chat and every message thread, and the other would never suspect a thing. Not until he ran. The fiancé wouldn't suspect anything for a long time, and Adea's life would be decided in a single Friday, February 23rd, 2018, morning, Hollywood. A perfectly ordinary day for a young woman packing for a weekend trip somewhere. At 11 in the morning, Adea walked into her favorite coffee shop near her apartment. The barista recognized her, and the cafe was its usual self. That was her last public sighting. After it, no one would ever see her again. At 12:48, Christopher Spotz showed up outside her building. Investigators would establish this fact later, not from witness statements, not from security footage, but from the most inconvenient data of all for him. The Google location service running quietly in the background of his smartphone, recording every move he made. At 12:50, her own phone went silent. After that minute, there were no sent messages, no network requests, not even minimal activity. Around 1 in the afternoon, a camera in the apartment building's elevator captured a couple coming down. Both wore baseball caps pulled low over their eyes. Adea was wheeling 2 suitcases behind her. From the outside, it looked like packing for the weekend. A light trip, comfortable shoes, no signs of tension. That same morning, Adea managed to send a friend a few short replies. No hint of worry, no, if anything happens, call my mom. After the elevator, the camera shows the lobby, then the street, then the car. After that, silence in her digital life. The city went on with its usual Hollywood evening. At the Stella Adler studio, no one knew anything yet. 2 more days remained until Monday, when she was expected at the casting session, and everything seemed fine. That everything was, in fact, far from fine. That would become clear from the maps the investigators put together later. Out of Hollywood, the car carrying Adea and Spotz did not head west toward the ocean, and not south toward California's typical weekend routes. It headed straight north. Up the interstate, in the direction of San Francisco. Spotz was carrying a smartphone with Google location services switched on. Every turn he made, every gas station stop, every brief pause along the highway was being logged on the company's servers, accurate to the minute. The route took him hundreds of miles from Los Angeles into the foothills of the Sierra Nevada. According to investigators, at some point the car turned off into the Spenceville Wildlife Area in Nevada County. It's a remote stretch of wilderness about 40 miles north of Sacramento. Trails, creeks, meadows, almost no rangers. According to the investigation, Spotz used the stops along the way for more than just resting. The podcast, To Live and Die in L.A., would later put forward the theory that he disposed of Adea's belongings gradually at different pull-offs along the route. The suitcases captured by the elevator camera were dropped along the way. By the morning of February 24th, Adea was no longer in his car. At 7:45 p.m. on February 24th, Spotz returned home to North Hollywood, alone. The location data showed him stopping in his own driveway, then moving around the city as usual. He calmly went to class, lived his ordinary life. It was the very data that would later turn into the map of the investigation. Gas station cameras, coffee receipts, cell towers, license plate readers at traffic lights. Every point along that route would be checked. On paper, the timeline came out almost perfect. A man drove north with a passenger, came back alone, and nowhere between those 2 points was there a single witness next to him. There was no witness, and at first, there wasn't even an official alarm. On Monday, February 26th, the new semester began at the Stella Adler studio. That day mattered at the acting school, not as a date, but as a moment. Parts for the semester's productions were being assigned. Adea had been waiting for exactly this day. She was up for a major role. She had talked it over with her friends. She had prepared her material. Everyone who knew her would later say with one voice, there was no way she would have skipped that day. Her teacher noted her absence, and her friends began calling and texting, first calmly, then with rising urgency. No one answered. Neighbors went up to her apartment, and the door wasn't locked. Inside, an empty room and a laptop on the desk with activity that had cut off Friday morning. No signs of a struggle, no goodbye notes. Her friends tried to reach her relatives, then went to the LAPD with a missing persons report. That same day, the troubling news crossed the Atlantic. In Skopje, Adea's mother heard about the disappearance. She couldn't believe the situation was actually serious. Her daughter was responsible, never went off the grid. A few days later, it became clear it was very serious. Her mother flew to Los Angeles. There, she ran into the American investigative system, which works by its own protocols and didn't yet see an obvious suspect in the case. The family decided to act on their own without waiting for the police. They hired a private investigator named Jaden Brandt, a man with experience working alongside Los Angeles law enforcement. A reward was announced, $25,000 to anyone with information that could help explain what had happened. Adea Shabani's name began appearing in the news, and Friday, February 23rd, went from being just another date to the starting point of a high-profile investigation. From the very beginning, the investigation kept circling back to one figure, Christopher Spotz. A few days after the disappearance, he reached out to investigators on his own and gave a statement. According to him, on Friday, February 23rd, he and Adea had indeed left Los Angeles together. He claimed they were heading north on a small weekend trip. On the way, he said, the two of them had an argument. He didn't go into the details. A normal couple, a normal fight. According to his version, he dropped Adea off somewhere around Santa Clarita, a town about 25 miles north of downtown Los Angeles. After that, he said, he drove on alone, and Adea was left to make her own way back. To an actor's town, the version sounded plausible. A couple fights on the road, splits up, the girl doesn't get back in touch with her friends out of hurt feelings, or because she wants to take a break. Hardly a first. But by that point, the police already had the data from his own phone. Spotz's Google Maps did not confirm any stop in Santa Clarita as a drop-off point. The route went well past that town, hundreds of miles further north. The car did not turn around near Santa Clarita. It cut across California from south to north. The LAPD would later officially put it this way. Not a single source of data confirmed Spotz's account. His words contradicted not one piece of circumstantial evidence, but an entire mass of digital traces he himself had left behind by failing to switch off his phone. Adea's family treated this almost as a confession. The police were more cautious. For an official charge, you need more than circumstantial data. You need direct evidence and a body. And there was no body yet. As long as there wasn't one, Spotz still had room to maneuver. Formally, he was still only a witness. Spotz used that room. On March 1st, 2018, a week after Adea's disappearance, he got into his car and left Los Angeles. Beside him sat his fiancée, Mary Elmalak. They were heading not north into California, but east into Colorado to Spotz's family. On the surface, the trip looked unremarkable. A man taking his fiancée to meet his relatives, planning to stay a couple of weeks, getting away from the buzz around the disappearance of a mutual acquaintance. Waiting for him in Fort Morgan were his mother Jade, his stepfather Jack, who had once adopted him, and 3 siblings. The family had been living on edge in that small town for a long time. Spotz's biological father, Chris Mares, lived separately in the area around Sacramento, the very places Spotz had passed through in February. That coincidence would later be flagged by reporters. His mother had filed multiple complaints with police departments in different Colorado towns about her ex-husband, and that was no secret in Spotz's circle. The family home wasn't a refuge for Spotz. It was a delay. On the outside, he stayed calm, talked with his relatives, helped his fiancée settle in, ran errands. Inside, a countdown was already running. Back in Los Angeles, the investigation had connected the dots: the phone, the elevator, the suitcases, the gap between his version and the digital data. They were watching him more closely. The car he and Adea had left town in was put on a wanted list. During those weeks, by various accounts, Spotz became more closed off. He avoided talking about the case. He seemed to know that what he had left wasn't weeks anymore. It was days. And all that time, he was living under the same roof as a woman who still believed she was about to marry a normal man. The end came on March 22nd, 2018. That day, in Southern California, in Riverside County, a patrol officer spotted a Toyota Tacoma on the highway. The truck was already on a watch list. It came up in the Adea Shabani case and was listed as stolen. Behind the wheel was Christopher Spotz. The officer hit the lights and signaled him to stop. Spotz didn't comply. He floored the gas, and in that second, a calm scene turned into a chase. The truck took off out of the city of Hesperia, a desert area between Los Angeles and the mountains. More units joined the pursuit, and the radio filled with coordination calls. The Toyota Tacoma raced down highways and back roads, the speed climbing. The pursuit eventually stretched to about 60 miles, almost 100 kilometers without a stop. Twice the officers laid out spike strips designed to blow out the tires. Spotz managed to get around them, sometimes on the shoulder, sometimes in the next lane over. The truck went west on the 91 freeway and exited at Green River Road near the city of Corona. On Rio Vista Street, just south of the 91, the Toyota Tacoma finally came to a stop. Not because of police action, but because the driver chose to stop. The surrounding cars set up a containment formation. Officers with loudspeakers ordered him to come out. What happened inside the truck in those seconds was not part of any standard arrest procedure. Spotz took his own life before the officers could get close. By the time they reached the truck, there was nothing they could do. The main, and effectively only suspect in the Adea Shabani case, never made it to an interrogation. Every question that could have clarified the picture of the last hours of Adea's life was left unanswered on that street in the city of Corona. Questioning Spotz was no longer an option, so the investigation followed the coordinates he had left behind himself. The points where the Toyota Tacoma had stopped on February 23rd mapped out a small area of Nevada County. The coordinates fit together into a route that had once seemed illogical and now made perfect sense. On March 26, 2018, around 8 in the morning, LAPD detectives arrived at the Spenceville Wildlife Area, that same remote stretch of wilderness north of Sacramento. With them came the coroner's team and additional specialists in human remains recovery. They worked along the bank of Dry Creek, narrow, overgrown, with tall grass and brush. One of the points from Spotz's coordinates led them to a section of disturbed ground. Beneath a layer of soil and fallen leaves, they found a shallow grave. The next day, the remains were recovered and transported to the Placer County morgue. The identification was difficult. Standard methods like dental records and fingerprints didn't work in this case. But Adea had tattoos, and that was how she was identified. The family in Skopje and in Los Angeles received the news. A body had been found, and the identity was confirmed. The coroner's report removed any remaining doubt. The report recorded severe trauma incompatible with life. The manner of death was ruled a homicide. The case officially became a murder case rather than a missing persons case. That's a legal distinction that changes a great deal. The LAPD now had a body, a coroner's report, and a confirmed link between Spotz's route and the burial site. The only thing missing was a living suspect to stand in a courtroom, and that suspect no longer existed. What remained on the map was a single point: the bank of Dry Creek, where Adea Shabani's Hollywood story finally closed in on itself. On the ground, the circle had closed. In legal terms, it had not. Formally, Adea Shabani's case remains open. The main suspect is gone, the evidence is in, the broad picture is clear, but no one has ever been convicted of her death. The LAPD has publicly called Spotz involved in her death, but they have never officially closed the file on him. In the American system, that kind of verdict requires a trial, and a trial cannot be held against a man who ceased to exist on March 22nd. Other, deeper questions also remain open. Investigators never established the exact place or the exact time at which Adea died. The motive was never established. Was it a sudden flare-up, a planned act, a reaction to something specific in their relationship? Nor was it established whether Spotz had an accomplice. In the podcast, To Live and Die in L.A., Neil Strauss and private investigator Jaden Brandt discuss the theory of a possible helper. They point to oddities in the route, to the fact that one person would physically struggle to manage everything that was done in the time available, but it remains a theory without confirmed names. Adea's family has no final court verdict to hold on to. What they have is something else, a full picture of the last hours of her life, the name of the man who was in the car with her, and the coordinates of the place where she ended up. Adea's body was flown back to Skopje and buried alongside her relatives. Her mother continues to push for clearer language from the LAPD. The case made it into an episode of the show Death by Fame on Investigation Discovery, where her story was watched by millions. Legally, it's a blank space. In substance, it's a closed page. Whether to call it a solved case is something each person decides on their own. The story of Adea Shabani quickly became one of the most discussed true crime cases out of Los Angeles in the late 2010s. Her path, Skopje, Paris, Dubai, Hollywood, keeps coming up in podcasts, articles, and documentaries as a route that many young women travel. Every stop along it is familiar to thousands of young women choosing a career across the ocean. Spotz's double life has become its own subject for analysis. Psychologists and journalists use it as an example of how a person can run two completely sealed-off lines of relationships in the same city. It gets cited in pieces about the warning signs of first dangerous partners, about people who can hold a facade together under any circumstances. The investigation left several key questions open. The exact motive was never named. The exact place where Adea died was never named. The name of a possible accomplice, if there was one, was never found. Her family continues to push for the official wording on the case to reflect everything that's known now, instead of staying vague. There's a wider layer to this case as well. The digital trail rewrote the way investigators worked. Google location, the elevator video, cell towers, gas station cameras. The road from Los Angeles heading north turned into a map that cannot be erased. And then there's the separate layer of Hollywood itself, which still draws not only the people who dream about parts, it draws the ones who use that dream too. Adea's name comes back into the public eye every time the conversation turns to young women who disappeared on the way to the big stage. Her photographs make the rounds on social media every few years, on the anniversaries or after new documentary releases. Hollywood off-camera is just as bright as it is on screen. It's just that now it has one more story about how the road into this city sometimes ends nowhere near where you expected it to.